Navadi Pachatyadesatari Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasa Shri Gaur Bhakta-vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasa Gaur Bhakta-vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki. Taro Premanande.
Hare Krishna. Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances of Lord Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much for joining us.
Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to you and Srila Prabhupada.
Prabhu, we are fortunate today. Her Grace Gaura Premi Devi Dasi has agreed to welcome you and to do the introduction to your background. Hare Krishna Mataji, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, okay, good.
Her Grace
Hare
Gaura
Krishna,
Premi
Prabhu.
Devi.
Hare Krishna, everyone. Please accept my humble obeisances. Hare Krishna.
Yes, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna
Hare
Mataji.
Krishna. So it's my honor. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Yes, we hand over to you. Hare Krishna.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Mataji, we can hear you.
Okay. It's my honor today to introduce ISKCON 35 years ago in South Africa, and he is a disciple of His Holiness Giriraj Swami Maharaj. He took initiation at the Krishna Balaram Mandir in Vrindavan on Paulastami. He has ably served in many leadership positions in management at the Sri Sri Raghunath Temple as the Vice President of the New Jagannath Puri Temple, as the Regional Secretary for the KwaZulu-Natal Development Namahata programs, and in engaging with various government leaders. He was appointed by the South African National Council to direct the Richards Bay Temple project, and most recently appointed by the GBC to serve as the National Secretary for South Africa. He has also age preaching and book distribution, and was instrumental in the printing of Zulu books for the BBT, in managing the Back to Godhead department, in performing counseling for devotees, and organizing Harinam Sankirtan programs and Japa retreats. He's also ISKCON's representative to the South African Hindu Mahasabha. He currently resides at the Sri Sri Raghunath Temple and is responsible for the maintenance and building projects there. It's an special honor for me to introduce him because he's been so instrumental in raising and inspiring many generations of devotees in Krishna consciousness, including myself. Thank you for everything that you've done for us, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Guru Premi, for that kind of introduction. As a topic that I thought it's such an open topic, envy. Last night, Paramatma Prabhu was texting me late in the night. I think what topic? I just said him envy. So I really didn't know, because I know everybody understands envy, so it's an easy topic to talk about. Is that true? Yeah, it's very easy to talk about this topic because we experience these type of things in our daily life. I thought I'll just read a verse from the Bhagavad-Gita, from the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad-Gita, that speaks about envy, and then we can lead into a discussion. This topic is so deep that can run for many days, but we got a little time and we could see what we can talk about. But we'd like to keep it open because feel free to ask and discuss, because in that way we'll clear some doubts and yeah, we can learn something together. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So I'm reading from the 9th chapter of Bhagavad-Gita, chapter 9th chapter, the most confidential knowledge. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha Idam Tetu Guyatamam Pravakshyami Anusyava Jnanam Vijnana Sahitam Yagyatva Mokshaishu Asubha. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, my dear Arjuna, because you are never envious of me, I shall impart to you this most confidential knowledge and realization, knowing which you shall be relieved of the miseries of material existence. The purport says, as a devotee hears more and more about the Supreme Lord, he becomes enlightened. This hearing process is recommended in the Srimad Bhagavatam. The messages of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are full of potencies, and these potencies can be realized if topics regarding the Supreme Godhead are discussed among devotees. This cannot be achieved by the association of mental speculators or academic scholars, for it is realized knowledge. The devotees are constantly engaged in the Supreme Lord's service. The Lord understands the mentality and sincerity of a particular living entity who is engaged in Krishna consciousness and give him the intelligence to understand the science of Krishna in the association of devotees. Discussion of Krishna is very potent, and if a fortunate person has such association and tries to assimilate the knowledge, then he will surely make advancement towards spiritual realization. Lord Krishna, in order to encourage Arjuna to higher and higher elevation in his potent service, describes in this 9th chapter matters more confidential than any he has already disclosed. It's a long purport. I won't go to the whole purport, but I just wanted to point out from this particular verse, is talking about Arjuna. Krishna is saying to Arjuna, the reason why he is revealing this knowledge, and the reason is that he's never envious of Krishna. So to get access of Krishna, if we have this quality of envy, then we won't get access of Krishna. We will not know or understand Krishna. So yeah, Lord Krishna is saying himself that you have to become free from envy. Then I can give you that knowledge. And the knowledge is required. Just like, for example, when you love somebody, then you know all the details of the person, what he likes, what he doesn't like, and how to serve him, what will please him the most. So this knowledge is very important. Now, Srila Prabhupada gives a very simple definition of envy. And his definition of envy is you don't like somebody. How's that definition? What do you think of the definition?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, Hare Krishna.
It's Ashmika.
Yes, Ashmika.
I think it's a narrow definition. Well, how we come to understand envy is maybe you jealous of somebody or something, or you envious of what they have or what you lack. Yeah. That's how I would understand it.
Well, that's an English dictionary meaning.
Yes.
I also checked that out, but I wanted to keep to Prabhupada. You see, if you really get down to deep what envy is, there's a whole lot of things.
Yes.
Jealousy is like synonymous to envy, you could say.
Yes, that's right.
It's synonymous. It's like it's a feeling or showing a resentful suspicion. It's like, when somebody is jealous of you, but it's very close. It's like more or less synonymous. But Srila Prabhupada gave this definition. He said envy means because Krishna, and we'll read about another verse in the 29th verse just now. Now we will understand. Yes, that may be a narrow, what you would say, a definition of envy. But Srila Prabhupada has thought about this very deeply. And when he says that, that you don't like somebody, it means that you really don't like somebody. And if you go deeper into it, you'll see envy means you don't like, you kind of unhappy with what the other person possesses or what abilities he has. And how do you solve envy? How do you overcome this? If I have to ask you, how would you overcome envy? What will your thought be? How would you overcome it? Okay. The first point is we must understand that if we envious, the envy comes from not satisfying Krishna, or doing things for yourself, for the body. That is the true definition of envy, because everything has to be done for the pleasure of Krishna. And the moment you do something for the pleasure of yourself, that means you are envious of Krishna. So that starts, actually it starts, the Bhagavad-Gita explains in the 7th chapter, there are different, in the 7th chapter, he also explains. But how this thing comes about, how do we, how does this really come about, is that when we try to enjoy separate from Krishna, that is in the true sense that you're envious of Krishna. And that's where all the problem starts. Let's see, just like in the 7th chapter, or in the 3rd chapter. In the 3rd chapter, text number 36, 336. One minute. The Bhagavad-Gita is a little old here. Okay. Yeah. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "It is lust only, Arjuna, which is born of the contact with the material mode of passion, and later transform into wrath, and which is the all-devouring sinful enemy of this world." So we only have one enemy, and that enemy is lust. So, the lust, the opposite of lust is love, or we have to transform lust into love. And Prabhupada gives a very wonderful purport in this particular verse. And he states that this is the only enemy. So whatever problems we have, or whatever follows from after having, if one is lusty, is caused, it's generally caused by lust, where we turn our head away from Krishna, we enjoy separately from Krishna. So in the Srimad Bhagavatam, there's a in the first canto, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he gives he deals with the original pure sex psychology, Adiras. And I'll just read it. Devoid of all mundane inebriety, the whole material creation is moving under the principle of sex life. In modern civilization, sex life is a focal point for all activities. Whenever one turns his face, he sees sex life predominant. Therefore, sex life is not unreal. It's reality experienced in the spiritual world. The material sex life is but a perverted reflection of the original fact. There's more said here, but I just read that. But so we must understand where this thing all comes from. That is, if we enjoy in a perverted way, separate from Krishna, that's envy. That's envy, because we want to enjoy separate from Krishna. So, is that okay so far what I'm saying, Ashmika, or is it you need more clarity on?
No, it's fine, Prabhu. I understand what you're saying.
Okay, all right. So, firstly, we have to understand, if we are breaking the principles of spiritual life, if we're engaging in illicit sex life, that is already being envious of Krishna. That's a beginning point. So it's quite a deep understanding that we have to have. That yes, it is lust. That's only our enemy, sinful enemy, and we have to conquer that. So, envy takes form in, different ways. And you may have read, and you now have Google, you can Google so many things and get different versions of envy. But the best way to overcome envy is like to give credit where it's due. And how you see it as just like Krishna says in the Gita, I am the ability in man. And if somebody possesses some abilities that you don't possess, then you can understand those abilities are coming from Krishna. And when you see it like that, you can become free from that envy. That's one way of doing it. Is there any other ways you all thought of overcoming envy? Tarun Baladev, Babs?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes.
Glorifying the person that you envious of.
Yeah. You see, then also it can be very superficial at times. Like you can say good things about the person, but internally you have a deep-rooted hatred for the person. See, externally, superficially, you can't be superficial. You have to be genuine about it. But it comes with internal purification. You have to purify the heart. That's where everything starts. The heart or the mind. Well, the mind is in the region of the heart. So we have to purify that. So true, you can, like a lot of people say, say good things about the person, but then after a while, the person is not around and will tell, oh, this so-and-so is like this, so-and-so is like that. So that is like character assassination. And then you get into so many topics about the person and then you become polluted. Actually, there was one of Krishna's pastimes, the Kaliya serpent, where Krishna chastises Kaliya. And that particular pastime is dealing with a very interesting matter, because it is talking about, it represents brutal cruelty, pride, envy, snake-like crookedness. So it's a very, just like when somebody is envious, you say, oh, he's like a snake. He's a slippery character, like a snake. So, and snakes, they have poison. And their poison is dangerous. So if a person is envious, he's more like have a snake-like mentality, and he has poison. So what he does with his poison, he deposits in other people's consciousness. He's poison. That's what he does. So the poison, he tries to poison the hearts of innocent Vaishnavas, innocent devotees, or other people. In general, doesn't necessarily have to be devotee. So this, we have to look at how we can, come out of this situation. Because, Krishna's pastime, and when you read deeply how Krishna chastises Kaliya and how Kaliya, it's a deep topic, but I don't know whether we'll be able to get through it today, but maybe at some other point, we can really get into it. But I think somebody has a hand up. We could attend to the question. Okay. Yes. I think it's Babs who has his hand up.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you for affording me the opportunity of the question. But I think this will be it'll be twofold, a statement and a question. But I think I concur with you when you said that I think for us to rid ourselves of envy, you made a very, very pivotal and salient point when you very correctly mentioned that if we think that I'll give you an example, a very apt example. If somebody is a good musician and is a better singer than another person, and if that person thinks and is cognizant of the fact that that talent is coming from Lord Krishna, then there would be no envy. Moreover, most people have the propensity to be envious. But I think if we all claim that we're not in the body, if we can adhere to this steadfastly that we're not in the bodily concept of life, then we shouldn't be envious. Although most people has this propensity to be envious.
Yeah, no, that's true. So what's the question?
No. It was more a concurrence from my side to say that what you just said was so true, that if all of us think that everything is coming from Krishna, then that will obviate the need to be envious over another person or person's talents, etc.
Yeah, the other way of looking at it is, see, Krishna is unlimited, and he can fill unlimited desires. If you have a desire to do well in certain field and category, he will give you that ability. He can give you that ability. He's God. So we need not be envious if somebody possesses some abilities that we don't possess. We shouldn't be envious of it. It's it's a good point that you raised about music. And music is something that people, envious of other musicians and how well, and they become proud in how they can sing, and they really want to, there's many things, like I'll give you an example. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Srila Prabhupada's spiritual master, he didn't, he chose the people who couldn't sing to sing.
Wow.
So you see, his idea was that the people who can't sing will sing for the pleasure of Krishna. But the person who could sing, he'll sing for the pleasure of the audience.
Absolutely.
So that's how it is. So, envy is like a very deep-rooted thing, because, people get upset. There was another incident where somebody was a talented dancer, one of Prabhupada's disciples' wife or something like that. I think his wife was a talented dancer. And then the person was saying, Prabhupada, my wife can dance and she should dance for the pleasure of the deities, on a Sunday program and lots of people are there. And Prabhupada said, yes, she can dance when everybody goes away. So she can dance, but not in the presence, for the pleasure of the deities, for Krishna. So we may, we develop pride, and that's nowadays I was looking at, as we deal with many cases where people have, different problems, and one of the things that comes a lot to the fore now is this personality disorders, where like narcissistic behavioral patterns, where people have, inflated sense of importance of themselves. They want excessive admiration, attention. They lack empathy for others. So envy is a very deep-rooted thing, but it actually starts when you enjoy separately from Krishna. And if you're engaging in anything that's separate from Krishna and you're breaking the principle, then you're envious. It's a bottom line that you can't get away from that. So that's how it works. It all starts like that. But Krishna is very, we can read other verses. Anybody else want to make any comments, or be open to some discussion? Aditi is there. Bhakti, Kudruta, Paul, I don't know, met you before.
Prabhu, we welcome also Professor Sharma from Pretoria. Hare Krishna Mataji, Professor Sharma.
Oh, really?
Thank you for joining us.
Oh, really? Yeah, I remember corresponding once with her. Yeah.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Good talk. Thank you.
Okay, you didn't raise anything from your, what do you specialize in?
Economic and management sciences.
Oh, okay. Right. Good.
Prabhu, the Mataji had a question the other day. I'm not sure if it was answered properly. She was asking about how to preach to non-devotees, and how do you influence them? How do you encourage them? Am I correct, Mataji? Is the question, is it right?
Yeah, we had a colleague that joined the other session 2 weeks ago, and he lost his daughter, and he was overwhelmed with grief. So the question was to focus on the body and soul, so he could put things in context. He did. He's still grieving. It's a month ago that his daughter passed away, so it's very soon for him to be fine. But he agreed. The speaker had indicated to him that he should distribute books in the name of his daughter, and he's agreed to do so. So we made arrangements to get books for him to distribute it. So those arrangements have been made. And then a devotee family will actually visit him next week and try to preach to him as well. They did try to preach to him telephonically, and so there'll be a face-to-face meeting as well in his home.
So that was actually my view is a little different. Is when somebody is in that situation, it's best not to preach to them. You're not the body, you're not the you're the soul. It's philosophical. At that point in time, the person is not looking for philosophical truths and explanations. He's looking more for some compassion and some solace. So you find that that when sometimes our devotees they start giving the whole they give the whole 18 volumes of the Bhagavad-Gita when they meet a person in this category. So we have to be a little cautious because everybody is a little different.
Yes.
Like in general, most people are not really, they won't take to Krishna consciousness because of your preaching. Most people take to Krishna consciousness by your behavior, your mood.
Well,
it's the mood. It's like it's not about the philosophy itself. Some people may understand the philosophy, but how you apply the philosophy with affection and love and your how you behave is better preaching. Is definitely better preaching. Like we had once we had a Christian family who came to the temple here, and the lady, she came and she was milling around, and she wanted some. I said to just wait. I'll come back and see you. But as soon as I came, I just left some. It was just a minute, and she had left. She had gone out of the gate and was heading for ShopRite, to the center. So I ran all the way, and I brought her back. And I brought her back, and she came back with a family, her husband and 2 children, and they all came back, and we were just chatting a little bit, and nothing major. I was just taking them around, showing them the building, nothing philosophical. The lady made an appointment to see me. And when she made an appointment, she honored her appointment after she came after maybe a week, after a week. And we sat and then we spoke. She asked questions and I just answered her questions. And then she came and she became a devotee. She gave up meat eating. She got initiated. It just happened to be. But the other members didn't take too seriously to the process. But it was just only her, So you have to know what to say people and when to say it and how to say it. It's an art itself, because you can just be if you look at the example of Sanatana Goswami was a Goswami, and he would walk around Govardhan Hill, and what the people will be talking to him about their material problems. This is what's happening. That's what's happening. And he would listen to them. And they would find so much relief just telling him those things. So, there's different techniques you could use, but mainly compassion and a lot of love and affection is important. Considerations like this, yeah.
Yeah, and no, you are correct. One has to be very tactful in this situation.
Yeah.
And we did have a discussion with the devotee family that will be visiting that, initially don't preach.
Yeah.
As you said, be compassionate because the family is grieving. And then, slowly, assess the situation, and slowly you can thereafter preach to the family.
Yeah, that's true. That's good. Yeah. Okay. Anybody has any other comments or clarity on the topic or anything what you feel we could discuss? Paramatma Prabhu?
Hare Krishna,
So I was
Raghunath
just like,
Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Yes,
There's someone
Prabhu.
comment. Rasaraj Prabhu, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Raghunath Prabhu, for the wonderful class. Yeah, I was just
Thank you,
thinking of this wonderful verse that we covered in Srimad Bhagavatam, the first canto, Parama Nirmat Saranam Satam, that the street of Srimad Bhagavatam is meant for those who are completely free from envy.
Yes.
And unless one is completely faithful to the Supreme Personality of Godhead and engages himself in the process of hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord, then there's no possibility of envy.
Sure. Yeah, when you start hearing the glories of Krishna, and that is one of the very core themes in the in the chastisement of Kalya, is when Maria Yashoda is hearing the pastimes of Krishna, and she's in an unconscious state, but because she's hearing this beautiful pastimes of Krishna's childhood pastime, she just she comes out from that unconscious state just by hearing about Krishna. We're talking about, our topic was, and rightfully what Rasaraj Prabhu said about this book is for, non-envious people, basically. It's true. And the Gita explains, like there was a question asked just in the week, we were discussing another point, that, then why don't we just select the people who are not envious and preach to them? But that's also a challenge itself. We don't know who's envious and who's not, and therefore we hold open class, and we have open class because those people who are innocent, they can be freed from envy just by hearing about Krishna. It's a verse in the Gita. It's I think in 1871 probably. Yeah, it's a verse. 1870 probably one. Yeah, 1873 actually. Oh wait, let's see, 71. Yeah, 71 was right. Yeah. Anyone who listens with faith and without envy become free from sinful reaction and attain to the auspicious planets where the pious dwell. So if you hear with faith and without envy, then you can go to this place where the pious dwell. That's called Dhruvaloka. It's a planet in the material world which is not destroyed, in this partial dissolution. So that's in 1871 of Bhagavad-Gita, because there are a lot of people who are, in some sense, very innocent. And Prabhupada is right, he explained that although not everyone is a devotee, still there are many men who are not envious of Krishna. They have faith in him. If such persons hear from a bona fide devotee about the Lord, the result is that they become at once free from sinful reaction and attain the planetary system where all the righteous and pious are situated. So yes, yeah, that's how, there's so much things can be told about envy. We ourselves at times, we feel threatened by others' performance, in spiritual practices, even as devotees. Even I was just reading the Nectar of Instruction, and even Srila Prabhupada said, and I'll read this, he said, those who think that the Krishna consciousness is limited to a certain section of people, a certain section of devotees, or a certain tract of land, and generally prone to see the external features of the devotee, such neophytes, unable to appreciate the exalted service of the advanced devotee, try to bring the Mahabhagavat on their platform. Prabhupada is saying now, we experience such difficulty in propagating this Krishna consciousness all over the world. Unfortunately, we are surrounded by neophyte God brothers. He's talking about his own God brothers, who do not appreciate the extraordinary activities of spreading Krishna consciousness all over the world. They simply try to bring us to their platform, and they try to criticize us in every respect. We very much regret their naive activities and poor fund of knowledge. An empowered person who is actually engaged in the confidential service of the Lord should not be treated as an ordinary human being. For it is stated that unless one is empowered by Krishna, one cannot spread the Krishna consciousness movement all over the world. So yeah, so Envy is at different levels. Even if somebody is very advanced in Krishna consciousness, may still have traces of envy. Even if he's advancing, even he's coming to the level of Nishta, there may be still envy, some sort of envy, like steadiness. Even he's moving up the ladder, envy is present, but that we have to become free from that. And the way to become free is to become deeply absorbed in Krishna consciousness and understand what is the root cause of our problem, which is lust, which lead us to not controlling our senses and engage in sinful life, and then we become envious of Krishna. Because if you want to engage in the pastimes of Radha and Krishna, and when you be one day involved in the pastimes of the Ras Leela, then that requires a lot of purity. Anybody else would like to say anything?
We also have Ravindra Chauhan from Namahata is here, and also the Mataji from Romania, Bhatta Kodruta Paul. Mataji, Hare Krishna, do you like to say anything? Or Ravindra Prabhu?
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you very much.
How are you? Hare Krishna.
Yeah, fine, thank you.
You did one mala?
Yeah, progressing slowly, but progressing.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not forgetting.
Yeah.
Okay, yes.
Prabhu, would you like to comment about the class today, Ravindra Prabhu? Any questions or comments from your side?
Yeah.
I don't have any question, but it is nice class. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for joining, Prabhu. Really appreciate it. Bhatta Kodruta Paul from Romania. Mataji, thank you for supporting us.
She's from
do you
Romania?
have any comments? From Romania, yes.
Really?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances. All glory to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you very much for wonderful class and for nectar bhajan. Thank you very much for the class.
Okay. There's one important thing. If one is envious, then naturally it leads to fault finding, criticism. And fault finding is like bathing in ass urine. It's something like that. So in general, when somebody becomes envious of another person, then he kind of finds a lot of faults, and we see that in many examples even in the scriptures, even in somewhere in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, there was a very nice example of somebody was upset with Srivas Thakur, and was a devotee called Gopala Chapala. Gopala Chapala he was a devotee, but he started finding faults. He was a Brahmin, and he started finding faults. And what he did, basically, he took all this Durga paraphernalia, the paraphernalia that you worship Durga, and placed it at his door, creating the impression that he's a follower of Durga Devi. So this is a great offense to a Vaishnava. And we may have similar tendencies, like we may want to do something, but to put some obstacle in the way if we're envious of a person. Is that not true? Just like you might hope that he's dead, we may be praying that you hope he dies, because you don't want the person, to be on the way. So it's an obstacle. So we have to be careful of that when we have that type of thoughts. That's offensive mentality. And we find fault. Like in this example, the person developed leprosy. It's a long story. Because what they were trying to do, bring him on a lower platform, wanted to reduce his prestige, because Srivas Thakur was such a exalted devotee. And we may do that, very unknowingly. We may be doing these things in our own work environments. I don't know. Most of you all work, right? We stay in the temple. We're busy, serving Krishna. But even if you work, we shouldn't have, we should be careful if we're developing these tendencies. fault finding. Yeah. Is that okay? So let's read another verse that kind of, is any comment, Paramatma, anybody want to say anything? Babs raised hand, okay.
Yes, Babs probably has a question.
Okay, yes. We'll listen to you, Babs, Prabhu. I'll go to Premi also. Okay.
Prabhu, if you can please unmute yourself. Babs, Prabhu, please unmute.
Maybe the next person should unmute then. He's not.
Gaurav Premi Mataji.
No, he's unmuted. Babs, yes.
Can I? Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah. This one thing was actually bugging me. I think we all must concur that there is incessant envy in this world, and also, Prabhu, you just alluded a little while ago to even devotees who are immersed in Krishna consciousness, but still display this trait of envy, and there must be an imperative. I mean, it must be imperative that they need their way to rid ourselves of that envy, because it's going on.
Yeah. You see, even devotees, but devotees are in a good position because they're in a position to rid the envy. But you get the materialist, he finds fault in the devotee and he becomes envious of the devotee, but the materialist is not working on his own envy. A devotee understands, and the devotee understands he's envious and is working towards it. But you know, the progress he may be making may not be to your satisfaction. It may be very slow process. It may be very little progress that he's making towards that. But still there's some progress. You know, there is some progress, and we may judge the person on the basis of his behavior at that particular moment. You know, yes, you know, that may be done, but he's still in a better position than the materialist because he is on the path of devotion and he's making endeavors to overcome that envious mentality. And that comes from associating with non-envious people. See, when you associate with non-envious people, they are not finding fault. They're not finding fault. They're not, engaging in bringing others down and minimizing the position of others. So if you associate with them, you develop those qualities. That's how it's done. Is it okay, Babs, or is there something more that you'd like to add?
Yeah, and I just want to say, Raghunath Prabhu, that the converse may also be true, because on the other hand, you might get like, as you say, material. Well, I wouldn't say materialist per se. You might get people who are not so immersed in Krishna consciousness, but are not envious because of their sense of humility. I think also humility will play a very, very pivotal role in a person being envious.
You see, humility, I mean, there's different definitions of humility. One definition which Prabhupada gives in the Bhagavad-Gita, he says, when one is not hankering for the satisfaction of being glorified by others. That's one definition of humility. You know, a person is not waiting to tell him, you know what, you know, sometimes like you may cook some very nice meal and you're waiting for the person to tell you, you know, how good it was. You know,
correct.
So you're not hankering for the glorifier or the satisfaction, for glorification from the others. So that one definition he gave. But another definition of envy, I mean, humility could be that total surrender. Just like, you know, loving the Lord with all the heart and all thy soul. If you're coming from a Christian background, this I think maybe will make more sense, the first commandment. So that means the person is totally surrendered. And humility, you know, is not reached overnight. It's a gradual process. You know, you have to follow the process. Actually, it's on the, see, like we have different levels, you know, 9 levels of faith. The first is Shraddha, faith. Then you associate with people, sadhu, sangha, you associate and you increase your faith. Then you take initiation, bhajana kriya, you take initiation, so your faith increase further. So when you take initiation, after you're taking initiation, the third stage, then you go to the fourth stage, which is all the unwanted things are coming out from the heart. Now my question is, this is the fourth stage. When you take to the process, the fourth stage, only after initiation, those things are coming out. So after you connect it to the parampara, all those unwanted things are coming out from the heart. And that's the fourth stage. And the fifth stage is nishta. And nishta means, it's like, it's a verse that we, that we recite from the Sishastikam, Lord Chaitanya's, the third verse. What is the third verse? Chinarapi sunichena torori sahisnena amanina manadena kirchanya sadahari. So that's like the third verse, where one is so tolerant, more tolerant and devoid of all sense of false prestige, and is ready to offer all respects to others. That is a state of humility and steadiness, that stage. So it's like the fifth stage. Now, when one takes to the process in the fifth stage, if a materialist doesn't take to it, he's in which stage?
Zero.
Zero. So that's the point, Therefore, a person who is maybe one of the worst devotees, but is better than the best materialist, because he's surrendering to Krishna. Does that make sense?
Correct. Yes, it does. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Guru Premi.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. I was thinking about what you mentioned earlier about other strategies for coping with envy. And if we're focusing so much on what someone else has, we lose focus of what Krishna has given us. And I think that having a healthy sense of gratitude for all the blessings that we have in our lives can help us to shift the focus away from somebody else, from our envy of them and what they have, to all the blessings that he's benedicted us with. And something else that I heard in a class once was that all the qualities in this world, the anger, even the greed, the lolium, can be reflected in the spiritual world in its purest sense, because Radharani gets angry with Krishna, and the gopis are, they also display some of the qualities that we may not think are positive in this world, but in the positive sense there. But the one thing that has no positive transformation in the spiritual world is envy. It's the only quality out of all the qualities in this world that doesn't exist in the spiritual world.
Yeah. But there's healthy competition. There's like, what you would say, but envy exists in the sense that, like, in the gopis, between Krishna, Radharani and Chandravali, but that's in its purest form, in the sense that when Radharani sees that Krishna is giving attention to Chandravali, Radharani is like gets angry easily also, especially when it comes to this loving affair. So not in that word, but what you're saying is true. It doesn't really exist, but there's competition in the sense that they tend to dislike the other person, because the other person is. But that disliking actually increases the pleasure. It actually increases the pleasure of Radha and Krishna, or increases Krishna's pleasure. Even like things like mistakes. Mistakes are also there in the spiritual world. There may be some sort of like for example, Krishna gets so mesmerized looking Radharani that he milks a bull instead of a cow. So he also makes mistake. It's like it's present. So some of these things, yeah. But what you said is quite true. Thank you very much for that. Yeah. But the other thing is that in the 29th verse of the Bhagavad-Gita, we just keep it to the Bhagavad-Gita, 29th verse. Anybody else have anything else to say? Ashmika, you there?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. I'm here. No, I'm just enjoying the discussion.
Okay, there's another verse in the 29th chapter of the Bhagavad-Gita, 29th verse on the 9th chapter. It says, I envy no one. I'm partial to, nor am I partial to anyone. I'm equal to all. Whoever renders service unto me in devotion is a friend, is in me, and I'm also a friend to him. So Krishna is equal to everybody. You see the first part, I envy no one, nor am I partial to anyone, I'm equal to all. That is the Paramatma feature of Krishna. That is the Paramatma feature we're referring to, where he's equal to everybody. He's the overseer, he's the permitter, he applies, he oversees things, he sanctions things, what you deserve and what you don't. He sanctions everything. That is the Paramatma feature of God. But whoever renders service to me in devotion, that's another level. Then Krishna has his favorites. Although he's partial, he's not partial to anyone, but still, because somebody is doing some service, he has his favorites. Is it okay? So God doesn't envy anyone, nor am I partial to anyone. I'm equal to all. So in the Paramatma feature, is equal to everybody. But as soon as somebody does some service, then he becomes, sold out to them like that. So God is not envious, but we are envious. God is not envious. He's and that is important to note that that he has his favorites also because of their love. And Prabhupada says it's just like any parent. He loves all other people's children, but he pays more attention to his children because he loves them more. Is it okay? The faith. Yes.
Prabhu, do you mind? I just want to ask you about the verse about Krishna saying this knowledge should not be explained to those who are envious or not austere or not. Do you remember that verse? It's in the Bhagavad-Gita.
Yes, in the 18th chapter, yes.
Yeah, can you please explain that verse to us, please, Prabhu?
You see, there is in the 18th chapter, let me just get it. Let's read it for you.
So there's two verses in the 18th chapter that talk about envy then.
Yeah, the 18th chapter, okay. It says, see, it says here, it's 1867, it says, this confidential knowledge may never be explained to those who are not austere, devoted, or engaged in devotional service, nor to one who is envious of me. So Krishna is saying this, that it should not be explained. But then we find, he says, do not teach it to these people. But then we find, because people are envious of Krishna. But then he says, in the next verse, he says, we have to distribute this knowledge. He talks about distributing it. In text 68, he says, for one who explains the supreme secret to the devotees, pure devotional service is guaranteed. And in the end, he will come back to me. So anybody who tried to distribute this knowledge is very fortunate. But he warns us that we should not do that. But then the next 69th verse is saying, there is no servant in this world who is more dear to me than he, nor will there ever be one more dear. And on the 70th verse, he says, and I declare that he who studied the sacred conversation of ours worship me by his intelligence. So first he said not to teach it. The next verse he said to distribute or teach it. Then he says the person who distributes it is most dear to him. Then he says you study it. By studying it, you worship me by your intelligence. And then he says in the 71st verse that anybody with faith, which I just discussed earlier on, he can go to the pole star. He can go to that planet because everybody is not envious. But having said that, that he makes all these comments. There's a verse on the 3rd chapter of the Bhagavad-Gita, and that is chapter 3. It's in chapter 3. Just get that, and I'll read that, what he is saying there. Yeah. Just 1 minute. Yeah, and Krishna says, he says, bewildered by the modes of material nature, that's 329, on the 3rd chapter, text 29, he says, bewildered by the modes of material nature, the ignorant fully engage themselves in material activities and become attached, but the wise should not unsettle them, although these duties are inferior due to the performer's lack of knowledge. So we are not meant to disturb people. But Prabhupada in the purport, he says, in the last paragraph, he says, and this is interesting, just hear it carefully, men who are ignorant cannot appreciate activities in Krishna consciousness. And therefore, Lord Krishna advises us not to disturb them and simply waste valuable time. But the devotees of the Lord are more kind than the Lord, because they understand the purpose of the Lord. Consequently, they undertake all kinds of risks, even to the point of approaching ignorant men to try to engage them in the acts of Krishna consciousness, which are absolutely necessary for the human being. Does it answer the question? Okay.
Yes, Prabhu, thank you so much.
Yeah, so it's like that. These are some of the points that you can ponder about. I'm open to any questions and any comments from the others. If they
There's a hand raised up by Gaurav Premi, Mataji.
Okay. Yes, Gaurav Premi.
It was actually, so Independent Swami Maharaj was giving a class about the similar point. And he said that when it comes to instructions from the Lord, the most recent instruction is the one that we follow. So although Krishna suggested that we don't approach the envious because of the tendency not to appreciate the message, but Lord Chaitanya, the most recent, in the most recent incarnation of the Lord, he actually told us to approach everybody with the holy name. So we follow Lord Chaitanya's example. And in a way, of course, Prabhupada being the Shakti Avechar of the Lord, he encouraged us to do the same. So it becomes those instructions that we follow, sometimes over that instruction from Bhagavad-Gita, but not approaching the envious.
Yeah, that's such a good point. Anybody else? I think then we can conclude, but if anybody wants to add anything before we conclude, I'm fine.
I was going to ask you a quick question about Dhritarashtra. Why is Dhritarashtra an envious person? Because Sanjaya spoke to him the Bhagavad-Gita.
Yeah, Sanjaya was speaking the Bhagavad-Gita, but the consciousness where he was receiving the information was different. You see, right in the beginning, in the way he starts it, he says, Dhritarashtra Uvacha, and he talks about his children. It's very like in a new, very like, as he says, Dhritarashtra said, "O Sanjay, after my sons and the sons of Pandu assembled in the place of pilgrimage at Kurukshetra, desiring to fight, what did they do?" So he's speaking in a very like, what you would say, in a neutral way. But he's more concerned about his own children. So that envy that he was not concerned about the others. He was just concerned about his own. And when you get more deeply into it, it looks like it's very neutrally presented. He's raising that question, but it's not like that. Yeah. Those are interesting points. Yeah. Sudama Das raised his hand. I didn't know Sudama was here. Yes, Sudama.
Hare Krishna, Raghunath Prabhu, Hare Krishna to all the devotees. Yeah, thank you for this very interesting topic. Just thought of a point about that it's coming from Bhaktivinoda Thakur about well, the point about the difference between a materialist and maybe a devotee who's seemingly like envious, or he's displaying some negative qualities. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur had said that there's 26 qualities of devotee, and even if a devotee doesn't possess any of those, he only possesses one of the 26 qualities, which is Krishnaika Sharanam, which is total surrender to the holy name of Krishna. His full faith in the holy name. Then even if he doesn't have any of the other 25 qualities, he must be respected as a devotee, and it's an offense to criticize such a devotee. So I just wanted to make that comment. Whereas if someone possesses all the other 25 qualities but doesn't possess this quality, then he full surrender to the holy name of Krishna, then and full faith, then
that's good.
I just wanted to make that point. Thanks. Thank you so much, Paul.
Anything else you want to say, Sudama?
Well, just on that point, that following from that, that's easy to sort of criticize a devotee, and to see the the negative, and that's like another form of envy, because we're just seeing the bad qualities or the mistakes that the devotee is making. And
see,
we're not,
carry on.
We may be not so in tune with actually how that devotee is progressing and advancing Krishna consciousness, because we are not advancing ourselves, or we are envious. We are checked from that ability to see how devotees are advancing, moving towards the goal.
Yeah, you see, you get different types of people. Some people will give, if they see a fault, they will give more attention to the fault.
Yes.
Then you may get another person who may see the fault, but you give attention to the fault, and so you see the good and the fault, and he gives attention to both. So there people are in different categories, and everybody have a little good quality in them, and it has to be magnified. So some may just see a small fault and kind of expand it to an extent where completely deriding the person. But an advanced devotee, he sees a little quality and makes a big thing out of it. He can just see this devotee. He's got such a good quality, he's running around distributing these books, giving this knowledge to others. He's so compassionate. So an advanced person sees something small and makes a big thing out of it. So some people may give attention to both good and bad, especially when you're a manager. Or as you advance, you're seeing only good, and you're not seeing any bad. Because you see, good and bad actually come from the mental, from your mind. It's manufactured in the mind. So this is good and that is bad. Actually, in this material world, everything is bad. But anything used in the service of Krishna, that's good. So where a devotee surrenders, you're talking about, Krishna Eka Sharanam, the one quality where he surrendered to Krishna. That's the most important quality that one should have. He's trying, he's surrendering to Krishna, and he's trying, but he's like fallen short in the other qualities. But the other quality does not make him a lesser devotee, although he does not possess it. It's like the mango. The mango is green now, right? You got a green mango. In due course of time, with the heat, the mango gets ripe. It's the same mango. It's the very same mango that gets ripe. So the devotee may not have all those other qualities. He's a green mango. But when he becomes a ripe mango, it becomes very sweet. So you may not have all the qualities now, but with time, with association. But the materialist, He doesn't do that. He's not trying. He's not thinking of Krishna Eka Sharanam. He's not thinking, how I'll surrender to Krishna. He's thinking how he can, become more materially opulent. And one of the things, like in rising when you have a lot of opulence, so what it does is the opulence doesn't drop you. As I said the other day, I was giving a class, I said that the opulence doesn't make you fall down. Because in bhakti, when you engage in bhakti or devotional practices, there's so many good, the opulence will follow you. You'll have so much facility. But what actually drops the person is when the person becomes proud. When he becomes proud, then he commit offenses, and the offenses drop the person down. So for materialistic people, they're always proud of their, whatever they attain, their possessions, and they're very proud. But for a devotee, when he sees that person has all these possessions, he's not disturbed because he can understand that this person has his possessions because of his past pious activities. That's the best way of seeing it. Because he was pious in the past, he got all this material facility. So you're not envious of him. It's just enjoying his piety, but the same piety will make him sin. Because he's enjoying this facility in the wrong way. And then he starts sinning and engaging in sinful activities, and then he falls down and goes to hellish life. Does that make sense?
Yes, 100%. And that analogy of the green and ripe mango is very apt in this context. Thanks.
Yeah, the mango is getting ripe. The same mango is hard now, but later it gets soft and it's relishable. It becomes sweet and succulent. So you may develop these qualities over a period of time. It's not overnight. The green mango, I don't know, artificially you can do that. You can make a green mango ripe overnight, but it's not so sweet. It's like that artificially you can, you can do that. These topics are very good. If we have to look very deeply into ourselves, really, I don't know, I never wanted to discuss this. I wanted to discuss some other things, but I don't know how we ended up, discussing these things. Just that it flowed. And that way. But envy is something that we must work on. We have to work on it. It's deeply rooted, and it starts all from enjoyment. Enjoying separately from Krishna. That's where it starts. So what do you think of that, Ashmika?
I agree with you, Prabhu. It's something we do have to work on. And also, I think everyone's understanding or perception of envy differs, but the points that were brought up, it gave us much to think about. And also, due to those different points, the solutions to it differ as well. So we might have had one solution in mind of how we would tackle enviousness, but listening to everybody's differing views and analogies and so on, it gives you different methods to work on it. So I appreciated that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Ashmika, but the thing is, the thing is how to overcome it is you have to be deeply absorbed in Krishna consciousness. That's the bottom line. You see, when Krishna says, Man mana bhava mad bhakto, always think of me, means you have to be deeply absorbed in thinking of Krishna all the time.
Yes, I agree.
When you like that, I don't know how much do you do. If you're dancing in a kirtan, I don't know how much do you like dancing, but if you like a lot or not so much?
No, I'm shy, so I don't like to dance too much.
Oh, you have to meet us. You won't be shy. Ask Guru Premi will tell you that.
Okay, then I definitely have to meet y'all.
Oh, you'll be dancing. Yeah, it's very natural. You see, see why you're not dancing, because dancing means unlocking your devotion. So if you don't like that, because that's the first step for advancement. When a person starts dancing, then he's unlocking his devotion, because that that false ego and all is removed, because we just ourselves.
Yes, there's no inhibitions. You just let go and you just.
Yeah, just go. And you'll get lost in this chanting. So someday I think it's nice to arrange a, I don't know, now is COVID, but we can have like a japa session where we chant together rounds, and we can have a kirtan together.
Yes.
It'll be something different. We can, we could come along and have a program like that. That'll be really good.
It will be. We just have to wait now to see where this infections take us. And then once all settles down, we can plan something with Paramatma Prabhu.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yes. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you. Anybody else? And we'll close up now, I think, because if anybody else have last question, then we can call it over. Yeah. So we'll say thank you very much, Rasaraj Prabhu, Sham, Mataji, Karna Shakti, Nikunjavyani, Ashmita, all of you all. Thank you for joining, and we really appreciate everything. I just thought of this topic last night when Paramatma is pushing me for a topic. I didn't know what directly envy would talk about. I didn't know what we're going to talk about today, but it was good that we spoke some things about, and we all made our contributions, and we'll meet again.
Krishna Prabhu, thank you so much for the wonderful class. We really appreciate your time and dedication. Just an announcement, tomorrow we're having Grace Gaura Premi Devidasi will do a class with us on overcoming fear. So we look forward in getting your association again. Prabhu, thank you. If you can please end off with Kirtan, we will really appreciate it.
Okay, yes, sure. Just a short Kirtan.
Thank you so much. Your Kirtan is so blissful. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Hare Krishna, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki. Yeah. Thank you very much.